Artim parabhavam.
Artim parabhavam.
Tapasapanayam stata.
Tapasapanayam stata.
Sandesham kartumarhasi. There are three verses. First two verses has no purport. So I read by myself. Third verse we'll chant together. Translation. Dear son, we have been defeated by our enemies and therefore we are very much aggrieved. Please mercifully fulfill our desires by relieving our distress through the strength of your austerities. Please fulfill our prayers. Text number 32. Rini mahe topadhyayam Brahmishtham Brahmanam Gurum Yathanjasa Vijayashyamaha Sapatnam Stavatejasa. Since you are completely aware of the Supreme Brahman, you are a perfect Brahmana, and therefore you are the spiritual master of all orders of life. We accept you as our spiritual master and director so that by the power of your austerity, we may easily defeat the enemies who have conquered us. Purport. One must approach a particular type of guru to execute a particular type of duty. Therefore, although Vishwarupa was inferior to the demigods accepted him as their guru to conquer the demons. Text 33. Na garhayanti ya artheshu yavishtangre abhivadanam Chandobhyo vanyatra na brahman Vayo jaisthasya karanam.
The demigods continued, do not fear criticism for being younger than us. Such etiquette does not apply in regard to Vedic mantras, except in relationship to Vedic mantras. Seniority is determined by age, but one may offer respectful obeisance even to a younger person who is advanced in chanting Vedic mantras. Therefore, although you are junior in relationship to us, you may become our priest without hesitation. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is said, Viditam Vyasa Vina, one may be senior without being advanced in age. Even if one is not old, one gains seniority if he is senior in knowledge. Vishwarupa was junior in relationship to the demigods because he was their nephew. But the demigods wanted to accept him as their priest, and therefore he would have to accept obeisances from them. The demigods explained that this should not be a cause for hesitation. He could become their priest because he was advanced in Vedic knowledge. Similarly, Chanakya Pandit advises, Nityad api uttamam jnanam. One may accept education from a member of a lower social order. The Brahmanas, the members of the most advanced elevated Varna, are teachers, but a person in a lower family, such as a family of Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or even Shudras, may be accepted as a teacher if he has knowledge. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approved of this when he expressed his opinion before Ramananda Roy. From the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 8:128. Kiba virpa kiba nyasi sudra kena nyasi nyasa jai Krishna tattva veta se guru hoy. It does not matter whether one is a Brahman, Shudra, or Grihastha, or Sannyasi. They're all material these are all material designations. A spiritually advanced person has nothing to do with such designations. Therefore, if one is advanced in the science of Krishna, regardless of his position in human society, he may become a spiritual master.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. We are very happy to have with us today for the Bhagavatam class His Grace Ameyatma Prabhu. We extend a warm welcome to him. Ameyatma Prabhu is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, initiated in the year 1973, the time. And he has worked on various projects in ISKCON, like one of the very famous projects during those earlier days was the first American Transcendental Museum exhibition, where a lot of dioramas and different things during those days were exhibited. Prabhu has a lot of technical knowledge. So that was called the Fate Museum. So Prabhu had worked on that, and he had published various papers and videos on Ritvik Siddhanta. If you know, he has a YouTube channel where he has spoken a lot about Ritvik in short videos. And currently, Prabhu is working on a book which will give a comprehensive analysis on the Ritvik philosophy. I welcome you, Prabhu, once again to ISKCON Bangalore. Thank you.
So an interesting verses here. And the previous verse in the purport, Prabhupada said one must approach a particular type of guru and to execute a particular type of duty. So, in one sense, a guru is a teacher. You can go to a teacher to learn any of the varnas, the shilpas, the ones who construct the temples, the workers. They have their guru, the Shilpa gurus they go to. So there's teachers. There's so many different teachers according to what you're trying to learn. So that, in that sense, guru doesn't just mean Diksha guru. It means whoever you're learning from. Your teacher in the school, the teacher, those are all gurus who teach. And it's not always transcendental knowledge, because one, in the different shastras, one can have guru to teach, like I said, the shilpa, the working, the construction. When that's a samsara diorama in the background. So when the devotees went to Mayapur, Prabhupada sent devotees to Mayapur in the early 1970s to learn this art of making the sculptures. Prabhupada called them dolls. And so they had to learn, and there was one teacher they learned from. And he became their guru for learning this art of doll making. But it was just for that. It was a particular, like it says here, that a particular type of guru to execute a particular type of duty. So he became their guru, although Srila Prabhupada was their spiritual master, their initiating spiritual master and giving the spiritual knowledge. They took another guru to learn this art of making the dolls. And so in that sense, there are many different types of gurus. And just to preach this Krishna conscious philosophy, when we go and we talk in the university, or we're giving a class and giving the philosophy, in that sense, we're becoming a Shiksha Guru, we're giving those teachings. So one can become, there's so many ways of teaching and becoming Guru. But the Diksha Guru is one who actually liberates you with that transcendental knowledge. To give Diksha means he's giving the transcendental knowledge that will take you out of this material world. And that is, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Pranipasnena sevaya. How does it go? The whole. So, to accept a spiritual master who is self-realized. And he's self-realized. He can reveal the truth because he already knows the truth, because he is self-realized. He can reveal that to you. So in that way, one should accept only for Diksha Guru, one who is actually fully self-realized. And that's actually Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita in the Padma Purana. Prabhupada quotes that one should only accept Maha Bhagavat. It says Maha Bhagavat as a guru. So one who is already at the topmost level of devotional service. And one should only accept a Maha Bhagavat, it says, as one's guru. So, in this age, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada's guru, when it's time to leave this world, our Prabhupada had said that he saw that no one was yet qualified. And at least Prabhupada himself had not manifest his qualifications, because our Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada said, that Bhaktisiddhanta said that he saw that no one was yet qualified. So therefore, he did not select anyone to be the next successor guru. He said that the next guru will come. One example I heard in the early days was that there are so many stars in the sky. So all of his disciples were like stars in the sky, but when the full moon rises, then it becomes very obvious. So our Srila Prabhupada, I say our Srila Prabhupada because our Srila Prabhupada referred to Bhaktisiddhanta as Prabhupada. One time, Srila Prabhupada was getting on the Vyasa-san in Los Angeles, and it was the first time I just shouted out, I said, Srila Prabhupada, all glories to your lotus feet. And Prabhupada looked at me and he said, Jai. And I was thinking, what? That was kind of unusual that he said Jai, but he was glorifying his spiritual master. When I said, Srila Prabhupada, all glories to your lotus feet, Prabhupada is automatically thinking of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So he looked at me and said, Jai. So, so when Bhaktisiddhanta left, he saw no one was yet qualified. And yet that full moon, when it rose in the sky, became very clear who the next Acharya was. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So when our Srila Prabhupada left, just April 22nd, 1977, just 3 weeks before he announced that he was going to be leaving this world, he had a conversation with Tamal Krishna, and he told Tamal Tamal, they were talking about Prabhupada's godbrothers, and then Prabhupada mentioned Hansaduta. And he said that Hansaduta was trying to accept his own disciples. Prabhupada hadn't given initiation for about 6 months or so before then. And so Hansaduta thought, he would start accepting his own disciples. Prabhupada didn't complain that he was still present. What his complaint was, he said, what is the use of creating rascal gurus? Because the complaint was he wasn't finished yet. He wasn't completed with his training yet. Prabhupada said he wants to give his order. You become guru. He said he wants to give his order to a disciple, all his disciples, he said. But the training must be complete first. Hansaduta was a GBC. He was a senior devotee. He joined in, I think, 67, at least no later than 68, because he was temple president by 68. So he was senior devotee, he was GBC, he was sannyasi, he was preaching, he was making devotees, he opened up new temples, he was doing so many, but Prabhupada said his training wasn't complete yet. So what is that training then? How do we know when it's complete? Because Prabhupada said only one should take initiation from Mahabhagavat. So one who is the topmost devotee, actual pure devotee, Paramahansa, on the Uttamakari platform, the highest stage. So it is not a cheap thing. So when 3 weeks before, so after talking about Hansaduta, then Tamal Krishna said, I've assessed myself, Prabhupada, and I've assessed all of your disciples. And he said, and none of us are qualified to become guru. He said, not yet. Anyway. And this was just 3 weeks before Prabhupada announced he was going to leave. And Prabhupada's reaction was, yes, he agreed. He said, yes, one has to be complete his study. One has to be fully qualified first. So Prabhupada agreed that none of his disciples were yet qualified. And in that conversation, then Tamal said, not by rubber stamping. And one cannot become guru by rubber stamp. And Prabhupada used that analogy of rubber stamping. He used it for several times. He used it for like Gandhi, when Gandhi called the street sweepers and basically the outcasts, he called them Harijans. Prabhupada said this term Harijan is a very respectful term. It means a person of God. It means that one has to be qualified to get that. Generally, in Vedic society, you don't call anyone just Harijan. A Harijan is one who's actually has knowledge of the Supreme, who has knowledge of the Vedas, who is knowledge of Krishna. Who is Krishna? Who is God? That is Harijan, is a person of God. And Prabhupada said, you don't just give that by rubber stamping. Same thing with Gandhi. Everyone called him Mahatma. But Prabhupada said, you don't just rubber stamp and call someone Mahatma. They have to be actually qualified as a great soul first. So Tamal brought up that not by rubber stamping. And Prabhupada agreed, no, you can cheat, but it will not be effective. So this is what Prabhupada had to say about rubber stamping a guru. You can't just call them a guru and now they're a guru. Prabhupada set very high standard. Bhaktisiddhanta set a very high standard for a Diksha guru. Bhaktisiddhanta had so many disciples. They were so expert in the Vedic mantra. I can't chant Vedic Sanskrit very well. But they were so expert and knew so many verses. Just that Vedic knowledge, having that knowledge wasn't enough. Bhaktisiddhanta didn't feel they were qualified in so many other ways. Because when we examine the character of Srila Prabhupada, and examine the character of the actual one who's pure devotee, in so many ways he is qualified. He's actually a resident of the spiritual world. He's actually has all of the good qualities of a Vaishnava. He was very humble. Not just gave trying to appear to be humble. He was actually very humble. When the devotees made the first Vyasasan for Prabhupada, he had raised dayas. He sat on even in New York, but in Los Angeles, when the devotees made the first hand carved, they actually went to Mexico to have it carved, and we weren't importing from India at that time, so they had the Vyasasan carved in Mexico. And when Prabhupada came in the temple, he said in a very humble way, I wasn't there, the devotee who had that carved was Narayan, my godbrother. And so he was telling the story, and he said when Prabhupada came in, he was saying, this is the seat for Bhaktisiddhanta. Prabhupada said, he is not qualified to sit there. But the devotees said, no, Prabhupada, we've made this for you. And he was tears in his eyes. He was crying when he sat on the Vyasasana. He was genuinely humble. When he was giving the class, this I was present for, in 1973, at Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance day, Prabhupada performed the Guru Puja, and then he was giving the class. And toward the end of the class, Prabhupada said, you're doing more for Bhaktisiddhanta than he was. He said, you are all doing more. And then he started crying. And he was actually crying. And he was thanking us for our service to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So he was genuinely humble. He had so many, and he had all of the good qualities. And this is not just that every time he spoke about any topic, he was always chanting mantra, always chanting from the Vedic scriptures to back up what he was saying. He didn't use Bhagavad Gita like so many other gurus. They used Bhagavad Gita to present their own philosophy, to put a twist on their own understanding. Prabhupada didn't use Bhagavad Gita, or the Vedic scriptures. He spoke and he backed up what he was saying from the Vedas, that everything he was saying is from the Vedic scriptures. So he was qualified in every aspect. So if 3 weeks before Prabhupada left and he agreed that none of his disciples were yet qualified, and he still wanted, he was still looking, he was still waiting to see if someone would become qualified. He said he wanted to give that order, that you become guru, you become acharya. But he said he's still waiting. So yes, in the past he gave so many instructions. He said in the past, before April 22nd of 1977, many times he had said that he'd wanted his disciples to become guru. He wanted us to make disciples all over the world. And so a lot of devotees quote from that and say, we've got Prabhupada's order. But that wasn't Prabhupada's order. April 22nd, he's saying he's still waiting to give that order. So that wasn't his order. That was the expression of his desire, that he wanted to see us all become elevated to the highest platform. All acharyas want that. Bhaktisiddhanta would, all acharyas would want all their disciples to come to the highest level. But if they haven't reached that level, then you can't artificially put someone in that position. Because in the position of guru, of Diksha guru, they are accepting the karma for their disciple at the time of initiation. And not just, what you've done in this lifetime. For the whole time you've been in this material world, they're accepting all your past karma. And unless they are in direct contact with Krishna, then that is not possible for an ordinary soul to be able to do that. So only a real pure devotee can give that type of shelter and can give that type of, can remove and accept your karma so that now you're given a chance. All that bad karma is taken away at the time of initiation. So now you're giving the opportunity to start over. So that's why Diksha is only given when you have made a commitment. You're chanting your rounds, you're taking a commitment to follow this Bhagavat philosophy and to follow Srila Prabhupada as your guru, to follow this Gaudiya Vaishnav and Sri Chaitanya. You've made a commitment and you're following the principles, then you're given initiation. At that time, your karma is removed. So now you're given the chance, continue on. As Jesus told one of his, there's a prostitute, and he came to her and he said, he was relieving her of her past sins, and he said, now go and sin no more. So once you're given that opportunity, then you have to be very careful and stay on that path and not fall down again. And sometimes there'll be temporary fall down. That happens on the path. But the mood, the consciousness should be that one should be very careful and take this opportunity very seriously. That we have an opportunity to get out of this cycle of birth and death. So Prabhupada was praying every day. He would pray when he would go to the greeting the deities, and he'd be praying. So I wasn't there. I was reading this. God brother was saying, but so that he asked Srila Prabhupada, what is he praying every day when he's praying in front of Krishna? And Srila Prabhupada said he's praying for protection, that he does not fall down into Maya. So every day he was praying like this. And he told devotees a separate time, he said, like our fault in the West, he said, we don't take Maya seriously. We don't take how strong Maya is and how dangerous. That we don't take that seriously, that we have to be always cautious, always careful, not to fall down. So when Srila Prabhupada came to the time of leaving this world, and he had already agreed just weeks before with Tamal that none of his disciples were yet qualified, then what was he to do? Because he had started a mission. Unlike Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, when he left this world and he saw no one was qualified, he selected no one. This tells us that the spiritual master puts the post of Diksha Guru on a very high level to preserve the integrity of the disciplic succession. That the existing spiritual master knows he must protect the integrity of the whole disciplic succession. He cannot place to someone who's not qualified, who hasn't reached that level, into that position. So Bhaktisiddhanta selected no one. But at that time when Bhaktisiddhanta left, that was in India. Krishna consciousness had not actually spread outside of the borders of India. Even though Bhaktisiddhanta had sent several of his disciples, his leading disciples, to the West. They went to England with monetary backing. They went with the Gaudiya Math had sent them. And they tried to do some preaching. But they couldn't make even one devotee. They wound up cooking chicken. They didn't cook, but they had, because people wouldn't eat the feast. So they wound up having, and they still couldn't attract anyone. When Prabhupada came, he sent his Grihastha devotees to England. And within weeks, they sent back, actually, I can't remember how long, but when it was sometime later, not weeks, but they had the Rath Yatra, and Jagannath was conquering Trafalgar Square. Prabhupada was so proud of his Grihastha devotees. So they were doing more than the sannyasis. So, as it says here in the purport, quoted by Lord Chaitanya, it doesn't matter if one's a Brahman, Shudra, Grihastha, or sannyasi. Those are material designations. So Prabhupada's Grihastha devotees were doing more. They actually, within some time, they actually met, the Beatles, George Harrison, and they produced record. They did so much in a very, So when Prabhupada, it's time to leave, and no one was yet qualified, and at least in India, there were so many temples. Vrindavan, there's 5,000 temples of Krishna alone. All over India, there are so many temples. The culture is there. If one is sincere, the path was there. There was a way to at least take up Krishna consciousness. Even though the Bhaktivedanta didn't select anyone, there was no actual qualified Diksha guru for many decades. Still, there was so much facility in India that if one was sincere, there was a path. One could come and become Krishna conscious. But when Prabhupada started ISKCON and he spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world, he was taking it to places where there had been Krishna consciousness, there had been no Krishna consciousness for practically a whole day of Brahma. From the time that Krishna was here, at the last day of Brahma, there was no Krishna consciousness in so many of these areas. And Prabhupada was planting the seeds by distributing, his books were being distributed by the millions. And so all of these people would be waking themselves into Krishna consciousness. Where were they going to go to take that shelter that would relieve them from the past karma of all their past lives? Who would do this if no one was qualified? And that, my understanding, is why Srila Prabhupada chose to remain giving Diksha as a Diksha Guru, even after he left this world. As I made my presentation and now I'm writing for the book, I saw how Srila Prabhupada had started this process of delegating different aspects of the initiation very early on in ISKCON. And by 1970, he was having the temple presidents make the assessment of the new disciple. It says that the guru must make the assessment of the new initiate, and the new initiate must make the assessment of the guru to see if this person is actually really qualified to get me out of this material world. And the disciple and the guru has to assess this: is this person really sincere? Should I give them that diksha and accept their karma? Because that is an actual very to accept the karma, it's a real thing that the guru is accepting that bad karma. He has to be able to absorb that and take that on. So is this person actually qualified? Will he actually be worthy of that? So Srila Prabhupada delegated that to his temple presidents because he started traveling and opening up new centers. And he couldn't make that assessment on his own, so he delegated that. That's actually one of the most critical parts of the initiation, to see that the person who's actually ready for initiation, is this person actually qualified? Has he been chanting his 16 rounds? Is he following the principles? Is he sincere and he's accepting this? So then Prabhupada started that early on. In 1970, he started the GBC, and he started delegating that because when Prabhupada was first doing, he was performing the fire yagnas. And then he started having other people perform the fire yagna. And then even giving of Diksha, second initiation, Brahman initiation, he told devotee that Prabhupada had made a tape already of him chanting the Gayatri Mantra to be played in the ear of the Brahman initiate. And Prabhupada said, if the tape cannot be found, then you can chant the Gayatri Mantra in the ear. He delegated. He was delegating these aspects of initiation, which we don't find any past acharya had delegated chanting in the ear, the Gayatri Mantra in the ear of the disciple. Prabhupada was delegating devotees who had only been initiated themselves for a few years. And he was delegating those aspects of the initiation process. We don't find any other, that I know of, any past acharya who had delegated those aspects of the initiation. Prabhupada said, he wrote, he said, if you feel that this devotee, Sri Govinda and his wife, are ready or qualified for second initiation, then you may hold the fire yagna. If you feel they're qualified. So he was delegating all these different aspects. The only thing in the July 9th letter that Prabhupada actually delegated, the last thing that he delegated, was that the recommendations of the temple presidents, those letters would always came to Srila Prabhupada. Now he said, send them to the nearest Ritvik. And he set up Ritviks around the world. When he selected the Ritviks, he wasn't selecting, oh, this is the most qualified disciple. Oh, he is the most qualified to accept disciples. No, he was selecting by where they were located. He needed someone for South America. Oh, Hrinananda. He needed someone in Europe. Oh, Harikesh, Bhagavan. So he was selecting by location. Someone in India. Oh, Jaipataka. Someone in, he was selecting by location, not by qualification. Where they were located. He was setting up Ritvik priests. So now you send the letter to the nearest Ritvik. That was the only really thing that he had never delegated up to that point. He had devotees selecting the names. He had devotees, giving the Gayatri mantra. He had devotees, but he had never delegated that aspect. Now the Ritvik receives these letters, and he will give the name. He will chant on the beads, the Gayatri thread, whatever. And then he will tell the president, this person is now accepted as Prabhupada's disciple. Directly. So now, past Acharya had done that, even while they're present in this world, even while they're physically alive in this world. So that system, it was very unique. And at least it is my understanding that Prabhupada chose to continue doing this even after he was no longer present physically, because he saw there was no one yet qualified. And he had spread this movement by Chaitanya's mercy. He had spread it all over the world. So many people would be coming, and they would need that shelter. And given that opportunity to have their karma taken away so they could now advance in their spiritual life. Who was going to do that? And so that is my understanding why Srila Prabhupada accepted this most compassionate and merciful role. He should be glorified for that compassion and that mercy that he's extending to the whole world. And not told that he can't be doing that. That was his decision to do that. And he should be glorified for that compassion and that mercy. So, I can end here. It's getting late. Are there any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the class.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, you mentioned in that case of Hamsaduta that Prabhupada was saying that training is not complete. They have to wait for the training to be complete.
1 second, because my hearing is a little bad and I couldn't understand. Could you just tell me what he was saying? I couldn't hear.
Last conversation that conversation you are suggesting about Hamsaduta conversation with Prabhupada.
The conversation with?
Hamsaduta conversation with Prabhupada.
Oh. Okay. What? I'm sorry, my hearing is not good.
Mentioning that Prabhupada said that the training is not complete.
Oh, yeah.
They should wait for the training. So the question is, why didn't the disciples get trained perfectly, and what did the disciples not do? Because Prabhupada's training was perfect. So what did the disciples not do right that they couldn't take up the training completely?
That's extremely good question. Actually, in 1969, I think it was 69, there are some letters that Prabhupada wrote telling different devotees that by 1975, they should be able to accept their own disciples. Prabhupada was thinking that very quickly, devotees were taking up Krishna consciousness in the very beginning years. And Prabhupada felt that in just another 5 or 6 years, he would have devotees who were actually qualified to take their own disciples. He said that he wrote the letters like that in '69 to at least two devotees. And my understanding, because later, by 1975, he never brought that up again. And of course, when he was talking to Tamal, he agreed that none of his disciples were yet qualified. My understanding is that they were making so much advancement in those very early years because they were in touch with the fire. Prabhupada was the fire, and they were the iron rods, and they were right in his personal association. They had so much of his association that they were glowing, and they were making so much advancement so quickly. But when Srila Prabhupada had to start traveling and opening up other centers, and they no longer had his direct association like that, they weren't able to continue that red-hot flame on their own. Prabhupada now saw it was going to take longer. So that, why didn't they advance enough? And that's an individual, our personal individual, we have to make that commitment to want to be a resident of the spiritual world. We have to qualify ourselves. We have to make that commitment ourselves. And it's not just an external show. It's not just learning different verses so we can give a good class it's an entire, like I said, Prabhupada had all the qualities of a pure devotee. So it's everything. It's our mood, it's our character. One thing that I always looked for to seeing how advanced someone was humility. If I always considered how humble one was if they're actually advanced or not. But that was just one thing. So we can still get to the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada can still take us to the spiritual world. But whether we're qualified to become a spiritual master, a Diksha guru, is an entirely different matter. It's not that none of Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples went back to the spiritual world. Prabhupada had one godbrother who was quite envious, and he passed away before Prabhupada did. And I think it was Ban Maharaj. And Srila Prabhupada had said how he had, when he was living, after Bhaktisiddhanta left, he had gone to court to get the properties of Bhaktisiddhanta house and Mayapur and all, and he fought so he could claim himself as the next Acharya in the Gaudiya Math. And he was quite envious of Srila Prabhupada. But even to the point where Prabhupada, Ban Maharaj had the Ishopanishad, and he had published Bhaktisiddhanta's Ishopanishad, but Ban Maharaj's name was in it, and Prabhupada said, no, devotees got that book, and he said, no, we shouldn't have that because his name is in the book. He said, milk touched by the snake has a poisonous effect. Prabhupada was that much opposed to Ban Maharaj, but when he left this world, devotees told Prabhupada he left, and they're asking Prabhupada, what's going to happen to Ban Maharaj now that he's left? And Prabhupada said, he's going back to the spiritual world. Bhaktisiddhanta will take him back because he did so much service for Bhaktisiddhanta in while Bhaktisiddhanta was living. Prabhupada said, Bhaktisiddhanta he's accepted that service. He will take him back. So we can still go back to the spiritual world. We may not be qualified to become Diksha Guru. Diksha Guru was at a very, Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta held to a very high standard. So it isn't that even Hansadutta wasn't an advanced devotee. He was making devotees all over the world. At least in Singapore and different places and he in Germany and things. He was making devotees. He was preaching. He had so many other qualifications, but he didn't have all the qualifications, obviously, to become Diksha Guru. Rameshwara, I knew him personally, and he was fired up for book distribution. I mean, you could not. What do you want to say? Take that credit away from him. He was fired up in distributing Prabhupada's books, 100% sold out to getting Prabhupada's books distributed. And he helped get them published, running the BBT. So that's all to his credit. But I knew him personally, and personally, he did not have some of the Vaishnav characteristics. When you had a personal meeting with him, and especially private meeting, and he would say things, and you could tell he was not, he was not pure in so many different ways. So it's a whole purification of the whole, because you can't have someone. I helped convince one person to become a devotee. He was a sound engineer. He had a recording studio. He had done platinum records for platinum CDs anyway for some groups. He had done the sound mixing. So I had him do the sound mixing for the museum in Detroit Museum. And as he was doing it, I kept preaching. My wife and I kept preaching to him. And at the end, he started chanting. We got him chanting 16 rounds, and he joined the temple. But he had a little problem. As soon as we finished the soundtrack for the Detroit Museum, he went and celebrated, and he just had to make a master copy tape, and he went to celebrate, and he snorted up cocaine. And he put a blank tape, and he recorded over the actual tape that we mixed down that we did, and he went and recorded over with a blank tape. He did the wrong tape on the wrong machine, and he wiped out the whole mixing that we had done. Fortunately, because we had spent like 2 days in that studio, day and night, mixing this, he fortunately remembered every mix, and he went and remixed it the next day, and he got it done right. But he still had this problem even after he joined. So Rameshwar named him Jatayu. And then about a year later, and I was asking Rameshwar about Jatayu, and he said, "Do you know why I named him Jatayu?" And I said, "No." And I was thinking, I could go back and tell this devotee, some nectar. He said, "I named him Jatayu because he's a bird brain." I thought, what is that? What kind of guru would that be? How could I go back and tell this devotee, he named you Jatayu because he thinks you have a brain of a bird. You're a bird brain. It's not. These people weren't qualified to become guru in so many other ways. But it isn't that Rameshwar was not an advanced devotee. It wasn't that he wasn't sold out to Prabhupada's book distribution. It wasn't that, but he wasn't in all ways a real, elevated Vaishnava. And why? Well, we have Prabhupada's books, we have the teachings, and it does take a lot of our own effort to look at ourselves at different times and say, because every time we can either choose Krishna or we can choose Maya. Should I do this or should I do that? And we know the right way. Sometimes we don't choose the right way. Sometimes it's difficult. But when you're actually pure and you're in connection with, and you earn that connection with Krishna, then we know the right way. We have to just keep following and keep trying and making our own effort. But we have to sometimes step back and assess ourselves. Am I really doing the right? Am I making all the right decisions? And if we're not doing that, then we won't reach that pure. But as I said, even if we're not fully qualified to become Diksha Guru, it doesn't mean we can't go back to the spiritual world. We can still be taken back. It's just that that Diksha Guru is a very high standard. Did I? No, you can. Hare Krishna.
Post 1977, what is the rate at which Krishna consciousness is spreading all over the world? Is it spreading at a good rate or is it slowed down?
It has slowed down in America. And I don't know, because I haven't been all over the world. I don't know about Europe, but I know in America it has slowed down. I know in Eastern Europe with a lot of, there's a lot going on. And in India, I mean, everything is, Prabhupada had 8,000 disciples. I mean, there's so many of the ISKCON, so-called gurus have, tens of thousands of disciples. No, Krishna consciousness is still spreading like wildfire in so many ways. I attribute, yes, the temple of Ram and Ayodhya isn't just because of Prabhupada. This has been going on for 500 years, that struggle. But the reawakening of Vedic culture in India, I attribute a lot of this to Srila Prabhupada. When I came, I didn't come to India until 1979, the first time I came. But devotees who came before me in the early 70s, and even when I came in 79, Vrindavan was still like village. The parikram was a dirt path, and I kind of wish it would have remained that way. The soft dust of Vrindavan. And but the temples were mostly older people, old retired people. There were no young people in the temples hardly. And in the Gaudiya Math temples, a few of them, there was some young men joining still, because there was still some preaching. But most of the other temples, Radha Damodar, Radha Raman, all these temples, there's just a few older men left. And now, Vrindavan is so crowded with so many people coming. That that is all Srila Prabhupada's credit. It is a major tourist place for everybody in India. So many people want to go there, even though they're going on a vacation or break, but they're coming to Vrindavan. And the temples are full of devotees of all ages. So Krishna consciousness is spreading. That's Prabhupada. It's not anyone else. It's Prabhupada's books. It's Prabhupada, and we're all assisting him, as Prabhupada said in that lecture. He thanked us for assisting him. He said we were doing more for his guru than he was, because we're assisting him. But so we're all, this temple. I came here in 1994. I came here when it was under construction. There was like a factory down over here. There was no big high-rise buildings. I think, a lot of things have built up because of your devotees, because of preaching. And what are we preaching? Prabhupada's books. So we're just assisting him.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, can you share some of your experience about what initially attracted you to Krishna consciousness, and what made you stick to Krishna consciousness for now almost 50 years?
And what was the last part?
What initially attracted you to Krishna consciousness and Prabhupada, and what has kept you following the path till now for so many years?
Okay. I was told the class should have been over, but it's going.
Last question.
I was, I was born Christian. My parents went to church when I was very young. They stopped going when I was 8. And not because they gave up religion, they moved from one state to another, and they just didn't like the priests and the ministers in those different churches, so they stopped going. But I went when I was young, and I was one of the things in Sunday school. So it's it's good that we teach the children very young, because at that young age, I was taught to pray to God the Father. And so I kept that up. Even when we weren't going, my parents didn't go to church anymore, every day I would pray to God as a person, as the Father. But I can't tell the whole story. But anyway, when I was in high school, one person asked if, he said about going to a youth program at the church on summer. And so I agreed. Okay, I hadn't been to church for for 9 years, so I agreed and I went. And then that minister was preaching how we should dedicate ourselves to Jesus and preach the word of Jesus, preach the word of God, and then we can go to God's kingdom at the end of this life. And I thought I was searching for what am I doing in this world. I just didn't feel I fit into this. I didn't feel I fit in. And I always, so I was always wondering, what am I doing here? And then when he taught like that, I thought, that's what I should do. I should dedicate myself to God and preach God's word. And so the very first person I went to preach to was one of my other friends. And I told him I discovered my purpose in life. He said, oh, good, what's that? And I said, Jesus and preaching God's word. And he was going, what? What's wrong with you? What happened? And anyway, then he said that he said, I don't want to go to heaven. And I thought, what does he want to do, go to hell? So and he said, God, he was a Catholic. And he said, God is just this old man. He doesn't know how to have fun. He doesn't know how to party. And he said, what are you going to do when you go to heaven? You just have wings and you float around in the clouds and play boring music on a harp. He said, I like rock and roll music. He said, if I go to heaven, it would be like hell to him. He would be bored as anything. And I thought, no, God's not like that. And heaven isn't like that. And he said, oh, what do you know? That's all he's ever been told. God is some old man. And I said, no. And then he said, what do you know? And then I realized I didn't know. So I went back and I read the Bible. I thought, well, maybe I missed it somewhere. And so I went from the Genesis, the first book, and I started reading. And I read through the whole Bible. And as I was reading, I got more and more depressed because I wanted to find out what God looks like and what God does and what happens when you go to God's kingdom. What will I do there? And I'm looking in the whole book, and it just says, one must accept one God of Israel, and and that was about it. As far as what does he look like? Nothing. There's no description. Prabhupada said, we have everything. We know what God looks like. We know what foods he eats. We know what music he listens to. We know where he lives. We have his address in Vrindavan. We know everything about him. We know his girlfriends, his boyfriends. We know everything. But in the other scriptures, so when my friend told me that and I went back and started reading through the Bible, I got depressed because as a Christian, that was the book of God. The Christian Bible is the book of God. That is the Word of God. There was nothing else besides that. And I thought, what kind of a world am I living in where it doesn't even tell me what God looks like? It doesn't tell me what he does, what goes on in the spiritual world, and what will I do there? Nothing. So I took it like if you're a tourist salesman, you're trying to, like, here's this island of Hawaii, and it's so wonderful there. And let's just say there's a king there, and and he's such a great person. You'll love being there, but you don't, what does this king look like? I don't know. What does he do there? I don't know. What will I do there? I don't know. How are you going to sell tickets to go to that place? Who would want to go there? They don't even know anything about it. All they're just saying is, it's this great place. Heaven is this great place, and God is this great person. You should worship him, and you should dedicate your life. So I started thinking, I've got to find out who God is. And so I was a library person. I went to the library, and I would read. Like electronics, I learned on my own, and all these things I studied. So I went to the library and started reading, and I went through every Christian book, everything I could find about Christianity, and I couldn't find what I was looking for. So then I would go to that section, the religious section. I'd always go to the Christian section, and then one day I realized, well, there's other religions in that same section. So I thought, well, maybe what I'm looking for is in some other religion. So anyway, I started studying Judaism. Well, that's the same thing. That's the Old Testament of the Bible. And then Islam, and that's basically the same thing. Abraham, I started reading and the book, and it was about Adam and Eve and Abraham and Cain and Abel. It was the same thing. It was just a different twist. So then I've already been there and done that twice. It's not what I'm looking for. And then I found Buddhism and Sanskrit and mantra. And I found this Tibetan Buddhism book, and I thought, wow, it's like the hot and cold thing. When you get closer to something, you're getting hotter. When you go further away, you're getting colder. And I thought, wow, I'm getting really hot. This is getting close. So I started chanting this Om Hrim Shrim Kling Mani Padme Hum, Om Hrim Shrim Kling Mani Padme Hum. I started chanting it for like months and meditating on this lotus opening up in the mind and the consciousness opening up, and your consciousness will merge with the all-pervading consciousness. And I thought, oh, this is so heavy. This is so great, And then one day I was chanting, and I thought, wait a minute, where's God? I've been praying to God as the Father, as a person. And I thought, this isn't what I wanting to know what God looks like. What does he do? I don't want this merging into the void. So then I went back to the library, and I kept reading, and I found 16 books of the Upanishads. They weren't Prabhupada, it was very scholarly written. It had the same format as the Bhagavatam, with the actual Sanskrit, the transliteration, everything. And then instead of purport, it said commentary. I can't remember who wrote it, but I started studying Sanskrit from it and everything. And then I went back and there were different books, and then I found Vivekananda's book. And one thing about his book was that if one is serious about becoming God conscious, one has to find a guru who is self-realized, from Bhagavad Gita. So then I thought, yes, then I need a guru. That was one thing, but not him, and not Ramakrishna, but somehow the Lord in the heart was helping me, because every time I was trying to find different books by different gurus, and every time I'd pick up a book, I would read one paragraph. No, not this person. He's not self-realized. Not that person. It was just the Lord in the heart, because I had nothing else to really judge by. But then, after several years of searching and wanting to find what God looks like and what he does, I finally had a showdown. I had already found a small picture of Vishnu from a Spiritual Sky incense package. It had a picture of Janardhan, I remember, because it was written in Sanskrit, and I read it. And I put that on my it was like an altar, but my desk at home. And I offered incense to it from the Spiritual Sky incense, and I was praying, and I thought, this must be what God looks like. And then I was praying, send me my spiritual master, and he will have written a book that will tell me everything about God and tell me what he looks like, what he does, and what I will do. I want that book, and I want from my spiritual master, and it'll be in the form of a book. And I read all these different gurus in the library and current gurus, and none of them were qualified. But I remember that Upanishad that I had read was from the 1800s, it was translated. It was reprinted in the 1920s, and I don't remember who it was, but I thought, my guru must have lived a long time ago. He's no longer living, but he has written some book, and I'm going to find his book. And I made this prayer, and I stayed up all night on a Friday night in 1970, and I prayed all night, and I took rest after the sun came up. But it started out as a prayer. In the end, it was, God, you have to send me my guru now. I've searched long enough, and I want my guru. And it was, I started demanding toward the end, and it was like, and if you don't send him now, if I don't find that book when I go to the library, then, if you don't do it, then what? I don't know what I was going to do or else what, but well, I was thinking, then I won't pray to you anymore. Then you don't exist anymore. Then, it's over. So I took rest, and I went to the library, and I went to the section where I always had been going, the Vedic section now, but I was on my knees, and I'm looking for a book because it was on the lower shelf, and above me there was some flashing. And I was thinking, what is flashing? And no, it was a brand new book. It was a brand new book, and I thought, no, I'm looking for a very old book. And then it started flashing again. And I started, what is that? And it could have been the fluorescent lights, maybe something, but that book was flashing. And I started looking, and it was, what is that? It was a silver cover, and it had bright red letters, KRSNA. And I had read from that Upanishads, the Sanskrit, and I'm looking Krishna, and I got the book in my hand off the shelf, and I'm thinking, oh, it's got a dot under the R, a dot under the S, and N, and that's a Kri sound. So this is Krishna. And as soon as I turned it over, I saw the picture of Krishna. Radha Krishna, on the cover of the Krishna book, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and I'm like, tears were flowing. I'm on my knees. Srila Prabhupada, tears were flowing, and I realized this is the book I was looking for. And exactly what Prabhupada says in the introduction to the Krishna book. He said, people will look at this picture of Radha and Krishna on the cover, and they will wonder, this is God, but who is this girl standing next to Krishna? That's exactly what Prabhupada said in the introduction. I was thinking, this is God. Who is this? There's a girl with Krishna, and I thought, well, this is perfect. Krishna is everything. He's both male and female. Everything is there. And I was thinking, and this is God's kingdom. There was a pastoral setting. There's a cow there. There's a peacock. And I was thinking, this is the spiritual world. So then I opened up the book. I was disappointed. The only time I have ever got a disappointment in Prabhupada's books, and it lasts for about 5 seconds. There was no Sanskrit. And I was thinking, how am I going to tell if this guru translated this book right? There's no Sanskrit in it. Like I'm some, scholar, Sanskrit scholar, and I was going to tell if he could translate it right or not. But I'm flipping through the book, and then I saw a picture, one picture after another, and what Prabhupada said, they're windows into the spiritual sky. And it's exactly how I felt. Every time I'd see in a picture, oh, this is what Krishna does in the spirit. This is the spiritual world. These are his activities. This is what I was praying for 2 years. I didn't have to read a single word. I was just looking at the pictures. Everything I wanted to know was right there. What God looks like, what his activities were, and what I would be doing in the spiritual world. And so then I thought, whoever wrote this book, that is my spiritual master. And I turned the book over, and there was a picture of Prabhupada on the back. Now, the original Krishna book is the same picture that's in the, the Radha Krishna Temple album. It's Prabhupada sitting with a big smile. They put a different picture later, but that original printing was Prabhupada sitting with a big smile. And I looked at that picture, and the very first thing I thought was, how could such a small child write a book like this? Such a big book. How could such a small child write? And then I'm looking, and oh, it's a small child in an old man's body. I always wanted to tell that story to Prabhupada, and then I didn't. It's not like I always wanted. I totally forgot about all this until years later, until after Prabhupada left, and devotees wrote about how they came to Krishna consciousness. And then I was thinking, oh, and then I remembered my story. I have my own story. We all have our stories. So then there was no computers back then. There were computers, big computers, but there were no desktop computers. So I went to they had a book in print by authors. Books in print by author. It was a computerized printout, but it wasn't, there was no computer there. So I looked up all the books by author, and it had Bhaktivedanta Swami. So I looked, and about 20 books, Nectar Devotion, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Easy Journey to Other Planets, so many, Ishopanishad, there's so many books already Prabhupada translated. So I wrote them all down. Then I went to the card catalogs to see which books the library had. They had 2 other books, the Teachings of Lord Chaitanya and the Nectar Devotion. So I went, and they were on different aisles, and I went and got those 3 books, and I went up to the desk and set them down, and the librarian looked at me, and she said, "How did you get those 3 books?" And at first I was going to tell her, oh, I looked up the author and books by catalog and all that, and I found them. And then she said, before I said anything, she said, I just put those books out just 1 hour ago, and they're on 3 different aisles, and I know you couldn't have found those books by chance. She said, how did you get those 3 books? So I just told her, I was praying to God to send me these books, so he sent them. And then her knees buckled a little bit. And then she said, just yesterday, this man came with a shaved head and a ponytail, with white flowing robes, and he came up to the same exact spot, set the books right here, the same books, and said, here, God wants you to have these books. And she said, do you know who that was? And I said, that was God's angel. I was praying to God to send the books. How would I know who that? A man came with a shaved head and a ponytail and flowing white robes. To me, it was like he must be an angel. So I said, that was God's angel. He sent the books for me. And then she almost collapsed. She just caught the thing from falling. She didn't say a word after they stamped the book. So she took the stamp. Her hands are shaking. She stamped the book. And she didn't say one more word. I never told anybody that story until like 1982, and Jayatirtha was in GBC in Detroit, where I was working on the museum, and he just mentioned something about how he came to Krishna consciousness. He asked me how I came, and I told him that story about the library and the books. First, when I said, well, I found Prabhupada's books in the library, and he said, oh, what library? And I said, oh, it was West Covina. It was a Los Angeles County Library in West Covina in California. And he just perked up. And he was very busy. He usually didn't have that much time, but he wanted to hear the story. So I told him the story. And when I got to that part about the man coming in and bringing the books, and I told the librarian who that was, I said it was an angel. And Jayatirtha said, that was me. I brought those books. So the very first person I ever told that story to was the one who brought the books. And the Krishna book had just come out. It was and he told me it was the very first book from the very first box they got. They didn't know how to distribute hardbound books yet. And they had just got the Nectar Devotion earlier, I think in the spring, and they had got the Teachings of Lord Chaitanya before then. And those are all hardbound books, so they didn't know how to distribute. They were just distributing back to Godheads and smaller books on the way to Krishna and things like that. So they didn't And so they didn't know how to distribute the big books, so he just took those 3 hardbound books. He was doing the incense at different stores selling, and he had to service an incense account. So he knew there was a library near that store where he was going. It was only a block away. And so he thought he'll take those books and he'll just give them to the library. Now, I don't know if he donated them or he had them pay for them or what, but anyway, he gave them to the library, and that's how I got Prabhupada's books. It was about Yasha Prashadam Bhagavat Prashadam Yasha Prashadam Nagati Kotobi. By the mercy of Krishna, one gets the Guru, and by the mercy of the Guru, one gets Krishna. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.